Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 21. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to the podcast, and I'd especially like to thank my Patreon patrons for financially supporting the podcast. If you'd like to help support, continue listening. Then share it with all your friends, and if you really want to go above and beyond, you can become a patron at patreon.com/thewoepost. You can contact me via email at bill@thewoepost.com, through my website, www.thewoepost.com, or through Facebook or Instagram at The Woe Post. Speaking of Facebook, if you follow The Woe Post, you've noticed my daughter Hannah has been helping to train our small Munsterlander, Skeet. Hannah, can you tell us what you and Skeet have been working on?
We have been working on sit, down, not stay. What else have we been working on?
How about come?
Yeah, come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're adding in woe soon.
Yep, you're working on woe as well, right? Yep. What tools have you been using to help train Skeet on some of these obedience tasks?
A clicker and food.
And you get to wear something that you like to wear when you do it?
Oh, yeah. A bag to hold the food.
Yeah, a little food pouch, right? You like that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is your favorite part about working with Skeet and training dogs?
Ooh, so, like, when I say come, I like just watching her floppy ears just go all the way when she runs up and down the hill. It's so funny.
Yeah, and she's always smiling when she's running to you, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Skeet's a good girl.
She's hilarious.
But today we're talking about our last French breed or our first Dutch breed, depending on whom you ask. Hannah, can you tell us about the Wirehaired pointing Griffon?
Developed by Edward Courthouse in the 1800s, the Wirehaired pointing Griffon, renowned as the supreme gun dog, is known for its harsh, low-shedding coat. Outgoing, eager, and quick-witted, Griffs are incomparable in the field, skilled retrievers in the water, and loving at home. Griffs are medium-sized, all-purpose gun dogs, standing no higher than 24 inches at the shoulder. They're known for an extremely harsh and bristly coat that gives them a natural, unkempt appearance. The preferred color is steel gray with brown markings. A lavish mustache and eyebrows frame large, rounded eyes that gleam with a keen intelligence. Griffs are the very picture of an honest, hard-working sporting dog whose handsome looks are the result of a noble and unaffected ruggedness rather than fussy grooming.
Today, to discuss the Wirehaired pointing Griffon, we have Charity and Charles Upchurch from Bluestem Kennels. Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Doing great. Hey, thanks so much for taking time out of your day, being on the show, and taking time away from the dogs.
They're always here. There's one about 10 feet away in a crate.
Excellent. I think mine are... Oh yeah, they're in here. They're racked out. I couldn't see them. They're on the other side of my desk. We took them out earlier today it's a kind of a local cruise night, classic car show thing in the next town over from where I live. So we took the dogs out there and walked them around and everything. So just that with everything going on with the sounds and the people and everything, that wears them out pretty well. So
yeah, that's good socialization.
Sure. Can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
My name's Charles Upchurch, and I'm an avid bird hunter and NAVDA extraordinaire, sort of. At least I volunteer a lot. And we've been raising, together with my wife Charity, we raised Wirehaired pointing Griffons, and we've been doing so for some time, and pretty excited to get a chance to talk to you and talk about the breed and our interest in them.
And I'm Charity Upchurch. Like Charles said, we bought our first Griffon almost 20 years ago within the last month. We've been breeding for 14 years. I've been the editor of the Griffoneer magazine from 2014 to 2018. That's the magazine of the American Wirehaired Pointing Griffon Association. I'm currently the board secretary. I'm also currently the national specialty chairperson, so I'm doing a lot with that in addition to having dogs at home.
So, what is the national specialty chairperson?
Well, a national specialty is every year with the AKC, if you're in a breed, the Breed Parent Club puts on the National Dog Show. So it's a conformation show. And then typically, like with us, we require to have our annual meeting, an awards banquet, and then field events. So we're doing an AKC hunt test, and we're doing a new field trial that we're trying. It's called the Working Griffin Field Trial. So it's based on the French working standard that the AWPGA has adopted.
Is that so? Does that standard include a confirmation show prior to the field? Is that kind of what we're talking about, or?
Well, the field trial, the confirmation show isn't tied to the field trial. The national specialty as a whole is a group of those events. The field trial will be capable of standing on its own without a confirmation show, but this is just where it's being debuted.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I know I had read when I was researching some field trial stuff and looking at the European field trials compared to the Americans, or even the early American field trials were modeled the same way, where they would do a confirmation event prior to the actual field trial itself. And I think you had to pass the confirmation event before you even went out to the field.
Right, like with that UKC field trials that they're doing now that are the Corthal's Griffin Club of the US is doing in conjunction with the Espanol Breton Club. That has a confirmation aspect to UKC before their field trial. But ours are not tied together at the AKC level.
Well, right on. And, thanks for everything that you do on behalf of your breed, what you do to contribute to the breed as a whole, kind of what we were talking about before we started recording. It takes a lot of people to keep the standard, manage the standard, what it is. And it's important, I think, for our sporting breeds to manage that standard for hunters, first and foremost, right? So definitely appreciate what you guys do. So now, I guess, Charles, we'll start with you. How long have you been into bird dogs? Did you grow up with bird dogs or hunting all your life, or what?
Well, I have had dogs my entire life. My first dog was a little mutt that I'd squirrel hunt with, but my dad had foxhounds, so I was the head cook and bottle washer of his foxhounds. And I got my first bird dog. It was a short hair. Let's say when I was 15 or 16. I was 16 years old and had that, and then went to college, and things moved around, and that type of thing occurred. And the next bird dog I got was a Brittany. And loved this animal, but he was huge. He was a monster.
A big Brittany, huh?
He was a very big Brit.
That was our first kid.
Right, but he was a great dog, wonderful animal. But as he started to age out, that's when I started looking for a breed that would, have some of those characteristics and traits of the Brittany that I loved. That friendly demeanor, that really willingness to be part of your little pack, but I needed more size, and I needed a rugged animal because of the type of hunting I was doing at the time and still do today, which had a lot of cattail busting and jump shooting of ducks and things like that. So I needed a dog that had the coat and the size and the stamina to stand up to a week of North Dakota or South Dakota or what have you.
That, dog power is important. A lot of times when we're talking about dog power, we're thinking about the number of dogs that we have that we can put on the ground at a time, or can we spread dogs out throughout the day? But dog power, when it comes to size compared to your cover, is also really important. When my small Munsterlander was kind of a puppy, we were out hunting some pretty thick cattail pheasant cover, and boy, she just got wore out after about an hour and a half of busting through those cattails. And at one point, I realized she was following my trail through the cattails, and that's when I knew that we were pretty much done for the day, unless I wanted to bird dog it.
That's right. Size is important. Too big can be problematic in that setup as well because they have a tough time navigating through some of that thicker cover. But there's a certain ruggedness that is needed, or at least was needed for that type of hunting. And not that the Brittany I had or other Brittany's aren't capable of doing it, but like I said, when I got to that point where that dog was say, 8 or 9 years old, and I was really working him pretty hard, I started to look for another dog, and just so happened that at that point in time, so 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of internet, but I found a Griffin out in western Nebraska, and I guess the rest is history. We bought that dog and fell in love with it. She was very capable, perfect hunter in terms of I wasn't experienced in dog training at all, at least not in any formal fashion. And she was a very intuitive animal. And we soon after that picked up another one out of Yankton, South Dakota. And that's when it really started to come together. But yeah, it would have been 20 years ago right now.
Within a few weeks that we got our first Griffin.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you guys going to celebrate your 20-year Griffiversary?
Well, probably.
Probably.
Like cleaning out the kennel.
But it wasn't just their hunting ability that kept them with us. It was their family. That's probably been the biggest thing for me that has led me to keep pushing with the Griffs, because sometimes, they're not a German short hair, they're not a German wire hair. And my husband's been like, oh man, I would love to have this precision. And I'm like, but oh man, I love having this house pet that's good with my kids, and that's what's really kept us with the Griffin, aside from, just being absorbed into the whole culture.
Sure. And once you're established like that and committed, it's certainly hard to make a change anyway. But it sounds like, you found the right dog for you, for your family, for your hunting style and everything. And that's it. A lot of these things come down to preferences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's enough variation, over the years. We've had a lot of Griffins and have gotten a chance to see a lot of different styles. And it's there's enough variation in the breed that I think we've been able to find a nice blend of that ability to obviously be a sturdy, robust hunting dog, a dog that can that you can also test with, which is a certain attribute that varies within any breed, but certainly excels in certain breeds. And then you marry that with just the demeanor of the breed itself and how it fits into just our personal and family life. Is for us it's been a combination that works.
Sure. And Charity, are you a hunter too, or did you hunt before you owned dogs, or?
I started hunting when we had our Brittany. Charles really loved to hunt, and I realized if I wanted to see him, I needed to learn how to bird hunt.
Can you say that again for my wife, please? She does listen.
I'm originally from Valentine, Nebraska, which is on the edge of the sandhills. So we have all of the, sharp-tailed grouse and prairie chickens. So I've been very lucky to have harvested numbers of those. So that's my favorite bird. I've also traveled quite a bit up to North Dakota with Charles, and have had fun chasing those wily pheasants around. I guess if you want to call it fun. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it's just downright hard.
It can be hard, and when those birds are running and you watch them flush at the edge of the cover, right, 200 yards away, just because you couldn't keep up with them, that can be pretty frustrating.
Or your puppy. I think probably the hardest time in North Dakota was we had a little puppy with us, and she got up on the edge of a pond and ran into a raccoon, and the raccoon tried to drown the puppy, and I just was hysterical.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, you don't think about raccoons being a problem in pheasant cover so much. It wouldn't be the first thing to cross my mind anyway.
Yeah, if you do it long enough, you will run across some raccoons.
I guess so, huh? So you kind of talked about how you got into the Griffs, besides the commitment and the networking and the investment. What is it that keeps you there?
Well, first and foremost, the dogs themselves. It's a breed of dog that I can that I really can do the style of hunting and the type of hunting that I like. They've got at least the ones that I've had on my string have the ability to do a week-long trip or to hunt extended periods of time. That's important. And I think if the breed was and the dogs that I had weren't capable of doing that, I probably would have moved along. So that's
Right.
sort of let me just sort of lay the groundwork there. There's also a great community of people, and that's not to say that there isn't a great community of people with any dog breed. I think you start to get involved with the breed, and you're interested in the futurity of that breed. You meet wonderful people, and so that's a big part of it, without a doubt. But it's those things. It's the fact that I've been fortunate enough to, obviously, with Charity to find good dogs and to breed some pretty good dogs, and to have dogs that have held up and have performed in a way that makes you want to keep going back for more. That has kept me with the breed.
And I always say that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, because it's the decisions that people made, for 100 years before I was ever around, that make it so that I'm able to produce healthy animals, litter after, I've been so blessed health wise. And that's what's kept me with the breed as well, as I've gotten extremely lucky with the bloodlines that I've gotten. I've been able to, get some of the old German lines out of Montana and Michigan. And then I was able to import a female from Quebec and sort of weave those, the German and the French lines in and out, and, make a nice, healthy combination that does both, good field work and water work.
That's, one thing that we don't all have the luxury of is that incredibly diverse breeding stock that, I think now that we're leaving some of the less common French breeds, and I think Griffs are still not an ultra common dog, but certainly more common than a French Spaniel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think having that luxury to really look at a completely opposite end of the spectrum within the same breed, and these dogs haven't been related for several hundred years, probably, it would be a really nice luxury as a breeder.
Yeah, it definitely is. When you look at those dogs that come out of Quebec and maybe the East Coast for that matter, which have a lot of French influence in them, they're a faster, whippier little dog. The dogs coming out of the upper Midwest seem to be a bit more stoic. They definitely have a bit more German in them. Those are easier dogs to train for NAVHDA, but it's also nice to get the speed and style out of the dogs that are coming out of the French line. So to have access to both of those types of standards coming together. And I think here in the U.S. we're blessed in that regard, because we do have pretty good combination. If you include the Canadians into the mix, which you must if you're into Griffons, then you actually have a pretty, you've got quite a few options to choose from if you have a particular style or a particular thing you're looking for within the breed.
So the Griffs, obviously, a Northern French and Netherlands dog. Can you get into their history a little bit?
Well, Cortals, he originated out of the Netherlands. He was a professional, kennel man. That was his profession as a dog breeder. He eventually ended up under a baron in Germany who funded his breeding efforts. And essentially, this was a type of dog that had been bred throughout Europe for quite a while. You figure it's a peasant's dog. This is the dog that's been raised by peasants to, if you think about how hunting is in Europe, it's the rich lords that are holding all the land. Well, these dogs are for the poor people to go in and get whatever duck or whatever pheasant or whatever they can sneak in and sneak out and hit the road and go home and feed their family. It was a dog to be able to get anything. So he went out and actually toured the countryside throughout Europe and collected like 600 different, examples of dogs that were like this rough-coated, all-around kind of dog. And then took that down to 60 dogs, and then established the breed from there, along with infusing pointers, setters, other types of retrievers and things like that. So he did not live very long. He was able to fix type in 14 years, which, being at my 14th year of breeding and still not being anywhere near to like having dogs coming out of a cookie cutter, is really amazing that he was able to, that tells you his bone pile was quite large. He was able to go from a heap of all mishmash kinds of dogs to running dogs that had a noticeable type in a field trial, a noticeable hunting style in a field trial, within that span of time. It is a notable effort. Then from there, once he passed, he was probably about my age, like 45 when he passed. And then it was mostly, there was a small group of guys in Germany that kept a hold of it. But obviously Germany, they originally wanted to keep the breed for themselves, but Corthal said, no, I do not want the Griffon to be the national dog of Germany. Figure out, that's how the German Wirehair became established, is because Corthal said, no, Germany, you can't have my dog. I want it to be for everyone. So there was a small pocket left in Germany, but most of his enthusiasts of that breed ended up in France. It was kind of a rocky ride from there. That brings us into the 20th century. We've got world wars going on. And so it's just, pockets of people held on as they could. There's still a few people in the Netherlands. There's a few people in England. The stronghold is still France, from what I've read recently, that it's still, even though we've had an uptick here in the US, that I didn't realize that France is still holding the largest number of Griffons that we know of in the world. So I think America, we're coming up there. It's like France, Quebec, and us.
If you look at the end of the 19th century, there was, prior to that, there wasn't a lot of, heavy pedigrees, even, across if you look at the entire dog world. So at that point, that's when folks really started to understand genetics better, and they started to breed dogs and create enough uniformity that they would have registries. And so that was all happening at the end of the 19th century. As Charity noted, as Corthals was developing that breed. I forget all the history that came into it, but I do believe he actually came into some financial trouble where he might have, for some reason, he had to go to Ippenwood, Germany, to the Baron's estate and finish what he was doing. Now, in all fairness to the Germans, they definitely had a big game component to their hunting. If you look at a Draughthard today, like, a true Draughthard is expected to truly span the the world of versatility, from birds to boars. So that obviously had something to do with it. And the Griffon is certainly not designed as a boar hunting dog. I'm sure you can track one down, and I've actually run into a boar down here, but they're not a boar hunting dog, right? You're not going to. That wouldn't be the first thing that would come across my mind when I'm thinking of Wirehaired pointy Griffon. So you started to have some of that, nationalism that started to occur at the end of the 19th century that obviously led into the First World War. And you did have that stratification as people started to say, I want this breed to be associated with this particular nationality. So again, I think that's, that is what it is. It's the history of the breed, but it's probably the history of many breeds in terms of a very dedicated person that had a vision in terms of what they wanted to create. He obviously did that. And if you look at some of the lineage and the Griffon and his records and Corthal's records, there was, he folded a lot of different types of dogs in there. I believe there are German short hairs folded in there. There are, probably poodles of various types. There was a wide array of dogs that he brought into this thing. But, the idea was you were starting to create a middle class as industrialization occurred. And there was a realization that a person couldn't have 16 dogs. And if you look at perhaps the old method where it was aristocratic based, you could have a kennel full of pointers and a kennel full of retrievers, and you could do, you could mix and match as you needed. But a standard person, and no different than today, most of us can't afford to have a big kennel of dogs that all have their own specific, unique purpose. If you look at that vision of creating a dog that could cover a number of bases, point a bird, track a rabbit, retrieve a duck, that is ultimately what he was working towards. Now, he was very active. It should be noted that he was very active in the field trial scene of that time. And if you read his works, and if you look at some of the sporting publications of that time, he was definitely this was a key focus of his. So I think that's an important thing to call out. It wasn't just let's create this great hunting dog for the yeoman foot hunter. He wanted to run those dogs and compete with those dogs against the breeds of the time, which included setters and pointers and German Shorthairs. So he certainly was developing this breed to be a contender within that space. I think that should be noted and it shouldn't be forgotten. To some degree, in the world of Griffons today, there's this desire to say, well, we want it to be the foot hunter's dog, and that's true. There's no reason that I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. But that doesn't preclude the breed or the dog from being able, or should be able, to move with other larger ranging breeds in the appropriate settings and in the appropriate cover.
I think one thing that I've heard from and maybe seen a little bit of with Griffs is their ability to adapt their range based off of not only the terrain, which any one of our good dogs should be able to do, but to the hunter's speed, and then of course I suppose to the other dogs that they're effectively competing with, right, in their mind.
I think it manifests itself in another way as well. They seem to have a pretty good governor on their engine. So if it's hot, or if you're going a lot, they seem to know that, okay, I don't need to open it up and dump it all on the field here the first 15 minutes. You can go all day with one. They may not tear the whole place down, but you look at some breeds, and maybe it's particular to some dogs. They'll dump it all the first hour or so, and then they start to run out of gas. Whereas a Griffon has like I said, it's a pretty good governor on it. They generally are able to pace themselves pretty well. And again, to the point you made, in big cover, open cover, if you're talking about hunting out on the plains, certainly my expectation is that the dog is going to cook out there, 200 yards or more, and investigate things. I'm certainly not going to walk through every plum thicket and briar patch that I come across. So the dog should be able to do that. I think that was an original intent of Edward Corthal's, and it is, or should be, an intent of the breeder today.
And I think that's something that I appreciate about the breed, especially when we're hunting in warmer climates, when we're at the middle of the day of a grouse hunt, and it's probably about time to quit. I like that they know that it's time to slow down and stop themselves, instead of some breeds don't have an off switch and will run themselves into heat exhaustion or to death. And the Griffon, they know when it's time to shut it down. And I appreciate that. I would rather have them walking next to me than having to carry them out of the field.
No, for sure.
Out west in an October day, it's not uncommon for it to be in the 70s. That certainly can happen. So either way, like I said, they've got a pretty good they've got a pretty good internal governor on them. And if they're in good health and in good condition, they should be able to cover the field adequately for just about any foot hunter.
Now, how about in the home?
Well, they're love machines.
Yeah, they're very affectionate. But one thing I always like to tell people is that even though they're super affectionate with their family, that when you introduce them to someone, I always want to have my dogs on a leash next to me in my control, because you have to properly introduce people to Griffons because they are protective of their house. Like, you don't want to, I mean, and it's just common courtesy not to walk up to a dog box at a NAVDA event. But a Griffon will like sound like a Tasmanian devil if you walk up to their dog box and try and stick your nose in it. They're very protective of their little cave and their little home. But once they warm up to you and are introduced, then like they are going to want to climb on your lap and kiss you and touch you all day.
That I've been in worse situations than that. That's for sure.
Before we moved down here, we had them all in the house with us for a period of time, and it was somewhat disconcerting. I literally couldn't move a muscle. We'd sit down, watch a little TV, and I'd have 3 Griffons sitting at my feet, and I adjusted or shifted or picked up the remote control. It was a lot of hey boss, what are we doing?
Is it time to go yet?
So they are, but I think it is a feature of the breed. They are definitely a people-oriented animal, and they are they're very good at reading you, and they're very good at assessing. They can train you if you're not careful,
right?
And they definitely want their pets.
Yeah, and so I think sometimes that super affection can become dominance behavior, where they will like almost suffocate you. It's almost like a mental trick. It's like, I'm going to dominate you with love. And no, you got to sit down on the floor and lay down.
There's an episode of The Office that my wife and I joke around about with our dogs, particularly my female small Munsterlander. So in this episode, Michael Scott is gone, and he's been replaced by another manager named Charles. And Charles is a tall, good-looking guy that some of the women in the office are kind of pining over. And Kelly Kapoor, every time she sees Charles or she'll walk into his office, she says, "Yes, Charles, you wanted me." Even though he didn't call for her, it's her subliminal way of getting him to like her. And we had this running joke that this is what my female Skeet does to me. Every time I stand up, she'll of course look up with her beady little eyes and, "Yes, Dad, you wanted me." Yeah.
Exactly.
You can be affection bullies if you're not careful.
Right. So how many dogs do you guys have in your kennel now?
6.
6
Six dogs,
ranging from 4 months old to 6.5. So
you got a puppy back there, huh?
We've got a puppy and one retiring.
And are they all in the house all the time, or do you rotate them out in the kennel? Yeah,
they rotate. Like, we raise them all, at least initially. They all spend the first 6 to 12 months in the house. That's important for a lot of reasons, right? I want a dog that's housebroken. If you're traveling, if you're a traveling wing shooter, you're going to stay in hotels, and you're going to be invited over to people's places, and things like that. So I want a dog that is housebroken, and it's also I think very important that first year of just building the bond between you and the dog. There's a lot of pre-work for more advanced training that occurs just casually as the dog's in the house with you, but every night, all the dogs come in the house. We don't leave them out in the kennel overnight.
Oh, okay. So they effectively live in the house. You just give yourself a little bit of a break during the day.
Right.
I think they want to. They want to be. Every squirrel that runs by the window otherwise is a target of their attention.
Yeah.
And, it's nice for them, and it's nice for us to be able to have a little bit of time.
Yeah, I really like the indoor loose or indoor crated and outdoor kennel life. I mean, it's just a good rotation. They need to be able to go in that crate at night. That's their home. Stay quiet, lay there quietly, don't tear the place up. But in the day, if we're really busy, then they're not like dancing around having to go to the bathroom, or, they, like you said, they can look at squirrels and birds or whatever. and be outside, and then we bring them in the evening. So it's a good combination where we're not just having dogs on top of us all the time.
I've got outdoor kennels here, and I mean, I've got indoor. What you can't see is the four crates that take up this whole wall over
Right.
here where my dogs sleep. We also have outdoor kennels. We have two 5 foot by 10 foot runs that are in the shade under our deck and everything. My dogs will not go to the bathroom in those kennels. I think they're just small enough that they won't go to the bathroom in there. So on days in most days when it's warm or in the summer when it's hot, they're almost always out there because they're in the shade. But I want them to be conditioned to the summer weather, mostly because early fall hunting like you were saying, Charles, it's really hot. But they won't go to the bathroom in their kennels, which is nice to not have to clean, but I still have to go out and let them out, every couple hours or whatever, so that they can not have to hold it all day long.
It's a good compromise.
It, it, it is. It's not that big of a deal to let the dogs out and let them get into the yard for a little bit and then go back in the kennel in the shade. But anyway, can you tell us a little bit about your kennel?
Well, as Charity noted, we've had Griffons for 20 years, and we started breeding them
14 years ago,
Um,
2010.
right, sort of the foundation of what we started with were, I'd probably call them like a legacy Griffin from the upper Midwest. The first one came from Western Nebraska. The other one came from as I said earlier, Yankton, South Dakota. If you were to look at their pedigrees, there's a little bit of crossover. Living out there, we continued to have dogs like that. We did go up to Quebec and pick up a dog at one point in time, it's very interesting. She had a big influence on our particular group of dogs. You can tell the females all kind of have BB's her demeanor. She just sort of had a way about her. And after that, we've kept dogs out of that first three groups of dogs, but we periodically picked up animals from other areas or from other breeders. In some instance, right now the main dog I'm working with, Obi, is interestingly enough, we owned his grandmother at one point in time. And so when we saw her in the pedigree, it was a sign that we probably needed to pick him up. She was a fierce dog. I've never seen a dog deal with a raccoon as intensely as this dog. So while she wasn't the most accomplished from a NAVHDA perspective, I knew what this dog had under the hood when it came to just going out and hunting in the wild setting.
And funny enough about May, that's the name of the dog that you're talking about, the raccoon fighter who was really fierce. She was actually from two different show lines. She was a Fireside's El Dorado dog. So like her personality and her style, like she was a beautiful dog, this beautiful show looking dog. But she was a very fierce animal. Yeah, so we've done a lot of different things. We had some blood come out of Jax out of Wisconsin. A lot of combining some of the old. There back in the beginning, there were dogs that looked like sticklehars almost. There was a whole line out west, and so that was our first male. He was kind of one of those looking dogs. And so we've kind of been blending those kind of more German style dogs in with, like we were talking about BB. She is out of Bayou, he was one of the major, Du Chasseur Bayou was one of the major studs to come out of Quebec in the last 15 years. So, it's really cool to be able to take some really old bloodlines and kind of weave them together, probably in ways that the people who were breeding them at the time had no idea were ever going to come together.
And my main interest right now, not that hunting isn't, but being where I am located, NAVHDA's big, and the Carolinas are blessed to have some really great NAVHDA chapters. And that's where a lot of my interest lies right now. So when I'm looking at dogs, I'm thinking about dogs and considering purchasing one or keeping one, I am looking at it through that lens of, do I think the dog will, have the essentially the mental fortitude to be able to handle, what, advanced NAVDA training requires. It's certainly, it's a skill set. If you look at what breeds are very successful in NAVDA, German short hair pointers, obviously. There's been a lot of very intentional breeding towards creating dogs that are high performance animals. And if you look in the Griffin world, there's a pocket of, it's not to say that there isn't, high performance all over the country, but there's definitely a pocket of it that is occurring up in the Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota area. So that's, that is, the last dog we picked up, the last male we picked up from northwestern Iowa, specifically for that reason, because the lines the dog was out of were all fairly accomplished with NAVDA, or at least they had a NAVDA background, a component to the pedigree, more than just one or two NA tests. So when I'm looking at dogs now, I'm thinking that's first and foremost in my mind is there's some record of performance, and if there isn't, then is there some indication that the dog, if you're selecting a puppy, is there some indication that there's some drive within that animal, or a resilience with that animal, that would lend itself to being able to take, again, more of the pressure associated with doing it, more advanced training.
Sure.
Probably what I'm looking at right now. I have since moving here, we have moved within an hour of a gentleman by the name of Lonnie Carroll. He is one of the winningest show breeders in the country of Griffs. He is an AKC judge. He is in charge of our judges education program. He used to be an engineer. And so he, like, even though I know like health and hunting ability and all these things, like he's able to articulate, angulations of bones and things that I don't know. He really knows conformation in a detailed way. So that's kind of what because I'm kind of out. I've got a kid who's in high school. I'm going to get one hunt in a year. I'm going to go back to Nebraska and hunt what I know just because it's easy. I'm not going to go stomp through the mountain rhododendrons looking for the last ruffed grouse of North Carolina. I'm going to go hang out with Lonnie and have him talk to me about Griffin structure. And I'm hoping that, this is kind of my dream for the next 5 years or so. The Griffins do not have an illustrated standard yet. And so hopefully we can get enough people, our baby boomers are getting older. And if we want to start capturing some of that knowledge of the breed, we really need to start writing a lot more things down. So that's kind of, once I get through the specialty, that's kind of, I think, where my focus is going to start going into, as Lonnie and I need to start working on the illustrated standard and pulling people in to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important, because if you don't do it, if your breed club as a hunting focused breed club doesn't do it, then somebody else is going to do it for you, and they might not have a focus on the utility of the dog. They might have a focus on the appearance of the dog. And at that point, I think your breed it's one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to split like the setters did, or your breed is just going to lose all of its hunting ability eventually, because the conformation people, the pet owners, the conformation folks, they will win out at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in clumps right now. I was just reading an article that Craig Koshik wrote a couple of months ago. And he's always kept a good eye on the breed. And I totally agree with what he says, that we're kind of in a few clumps right now as far as our types go. I look at 3 clumps. I'm trying to be in the middle clump. There's the show you're in. Then we've got folks that are really sleek on the other side that are looking really sporty. And I'm trying to keep it somewhere in the middle. And we've got to all sort of come together and figure out, where are we on this, what are we going to record as who we are? Or, I know some breeds, like with the golden retrievers, they have multiple versions of Like, so these 5 different dogs are correct, even though they look a little bit different. That's probably where we're going to land.
The body size, conformation, and coat are very important. And those, that's putting the hunting ability and all the desire, the drive, things like that. That has to be in the package. All the other stuff doesn't mean anything if you don't have those components there. But coat is very important to me. Now that I'm down south, obviously it's it's not the coolest place on the planet. But all that being said, I'm also not interested in a short-haired dog. It's not that I have anything against them, but a Griffon, if you look at what Quathal's designed, developed, and bred, they weren't German Shorthairs. They were something different. They were a Griffon, and that has a coat, and that absolutely shows up as very valuable when you are out. If you're out hunting in thick, heavy cover, that's protection that dog gets. So put the heat off to the side, and put the thermal element off to the side. That coat comes in very handy when you are going through thick cattails or kosher thickets or any of that heavy cover that you're going to expect the dog to go through. And if you're hunting pheasants, you're hunting birds that are adjacent to, in most instances, the agricultural land, and that means you're probably hunting some pretty weedy patches. And so that is one nice thing about a Griffon, is that coat should be dense enough and harsh enough and thick enough that you can run that dog through there day after day without experiencing a lot of wear and tear on their actual physical makeup.
Right.
And it's, you can go too far the other way as well, right? If you have too much hair, obviously the dog thermally comes apart. They're not able to handle it, and then you have to deal with just the nuisance of lots of stickers and things like that in their coat. A good wiry coat is just that. It should provide them with the protection that they need in order to handle cover, the thermal protection they need in order to handle cold and wet. But it should also be tight enough and dense enough that it's not just something that's loose that is collecting every stick, on, seed, burr that you run across. And if they do get them in there, you should be able to pull them out pretty easily. So it's a balance. And so those are the kind of things we're looking at: size, structure, drive, desire, cooperation, and coat. Those are all
Health.
Yeah, health. Yeah, absolutely. Ease of care. That doesn't always get top billing, but a dog that is
No separation anxiety. I won't put up with that.
right, but ease of care in the sense that an animal that has got serious allergies and things like
No.
that, those, God bless the people that take care of those dogs because they're angels, but it's not good for
not
any
what you wanna breed.
to perpetuate that type of situation.
You mentioned the coat before, and every time I see a Griff, the first question that comes to my mind is, how easy is it, or how hard is it really, to brush that coat in the event that it gets full of stick tights or cockleburs, or cockleburs, you're probably pulling those out by hand, but so what you guys can't see right now is Charity's pointing at herself, so I'm assuming that you're the one that has the
That means
privilege
I'm
of
answering this question because that's my job. You would be surprised. That is one of the things that really made me fall in love with the breed also initially, because we were coming off of that Brittany, and out in Nebraska around the edges of the water, there are those brown cockleburs, and on a Brittany, that white fluffy hair, it would just wrap around those cockleburs, and like by the end of a hunting trip, I'd be cutting hair out. But the wire coat is designed to pop loose. So you come out, I think in all of our trucks we have horse brushes, the really wide tooth horse brushes, and you just give it a run through and pop, they pop. What doesn't come out really well are porcupine quills.
yeah. I don't think you just get to brush those out, unfortunately.
Sometimes the vet has to pull them out.
Have you guys run into porcupines a whole bunch?
Oh yeah, there's definitely if you hunt out west long enough, you're going to run into some porcupines. I
Yeah,
now have a policy of when we run across a porcupine, and I don't shoot the porcupines. Everybody gets hit on the electric. I want them to blink those damn things.
sure.
Bad
I
things happen to the dog when porcupines show up, and I want them to always be reminded of it. We're not out here to hunt porcupines.
I'm not going to jinx myself, so I won't say anything about whether or not I've ever had a dog, one of my own personal dogs, encounter a porcupine. But I've had plenty of friends' dogs encounter porcupines, and I've got plenty of experience with other dogs pulling quills. So I'm certainly familiar enough with that. I think as familiar as I need to be. I'm not asking for any more familiarity with that.
No, don't let the porcupine gods hear you.
That's as far as I'm going to take that. So you mentioned your female BB from Quebec, right? Did I get that
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Yeah,
You
Bourg
mentioned her.
Royal is where we got her from.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Bourg Royal, it looks like Bourg Royal. Bourg Royal at Gilbert Tremblay and René Fortier. It looks like Gilbert Tremblay and René Fortier if you were to anglicize it. But they've been breeding for quite a while up in Quebec. They're in a little town called Saint Lambert de la Zone that we've been to a few times. And they're sort of coming off of Steve Brodeur's Du Chasseur, very prolific kennel. So they've taken quite a few dogs, and they also have imported directly from France themselves. They've slowed down quite a bit. I think they're working with the younger person. They're a little bit older than we are. But I think they have a younger person that they're working with, and they're still breeding. I think not as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad I don't have a French breed because I can't say anything of what you just said. I'm not even going to try.
And they get so mad at me that I can't speak French. You're always speaking the English, Charity. You are smart enough to learn the French.
They say it just like that, I'm sure.
They do. That's exactly what they say. Charity.
So besides kind of her temperament that she's passed down that you guys have really benefited from, and I guess any other dogs if you want to bring them up, but what are some of the standout features from BB? And I bring up BB because you brought her up as a really memorable dog that's contributed a ton to your kennel.
She was a very stylish animal. And so her daughters, which we've traditionally kept, daughters and
granddaughters now.
They have a nice range, and for sharp tail hunting, which is one of my absolute favorite birds to hunt. They were smart, I'll never forget, at one point in time I was hunting this spot, and that dog stopped, and it was a beautiful point, and I walked up thinking the birds were going to be 30, 40 yards in front of her. They weren't. Those birds were close to 100 yards in front of her. That dog wasn't trained to do any of that. The dog just had a damn good nose and a beautiful point and enough range on her that she would get out there and find birds. So there was just a very fluid and graceful manner about that dog, plus good bird sense and damn good nose that made her stand out.
And just beautiful. She's still alive. She's totally deaf and blind. She's retired out in Kansas with the family. They lead her around and walk her around the yard and love her to death. She's 15, but just a beautiful dog. I was able to travel up to Minneapolis. I only got to show her once or twice because there's just not a big show circuit in the Midwest. We didn't have majors or anything. But one time in Minneapolis, I was able to get to a major, and she got reserve winner's bitch in a good lineup. So, just good confirmation for being, some of the French dogs do have softer coats, but BB did not. She had a really nice, flowy kind of wire coat that was just really beautiful, and nice head furnishings and good structure. And yeah, she's really contributed a lot to our program.
Oh, that's excellent. Right on. What other, I guess, do you have a great hunting story about one of your dogs? Or I see Charles kind of smiling, so I know you do.
I mean, I've got a lot of good hunting stories. Um, maybe the funniest hunting story. Maybe it's an interesting story. So when we got Obi, which is our current dog, he's going to Invitational this year. We picked him up in Laramie, Wyoming, and he's the one we owned. We owned his grandmother, but we drove from Omaha to Laramie in one shot. Picked up the dog, turned around, and drove about halfway back. So mid Nebraska. Spent the night, and I thought, I'm out here on some damn good pheasant hunting. Let's go do a little bit of hunting before we head back. And I find a spot that looked right. It was a public spot that was far enough off the interstate that wasn't going to have too much pressure, and it had all the right things coming about it. Plus, we had that beautiful snow coming in. It was just kind of gray,
perfect.
So it was the right kind of weather, and we pulled in, and I parked the truck, and Charity was sitting in the cab with the puppy. They're both watching me. I dropped two dogs and have my gear on, and I don't know if I walked 30 yards or so, and the two dogs just lock up. And the bird gets up, and I shoot the birds. And Charity and the pup are watching the bird go down. I thought, that's pretty fortuitous to his first time, not really in the field, but close enough to take down a pheasant and have it all come together like that. That was a fun story. But no, I mean I've hunted a lot.
I've got one.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when we were up in North Dakota and we were in that patch where it was just like the three little clumps of cattails. Like it couldn't have been more than I don't know. It was probably the size of like 4 dining room tables of cattails. And the rest of it was just barren. And so Charles walks up to the first little clump of cattails, boom, takes down a rooster. Goes to the other clump of cattails, 2 roosters get up, boom, boom. He takes those 2 out. He did a limit in like probably 5 minutes. So
wow.
I think that's the fastest limit I've ever seen him take a pheasant.
They had nowhere else to hide.
We had dogs on. I didn't pick a single bird up.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, the pheasants had nowhere else to hide. That was. Oh, man. Right on.
I'm a really bad shot, so that's super exciting for me to see Charles just knock him down. I'm like a 20 in the 20. Like I hit maybe a quarter of what I shoot because I'm right-handed from being an athlete my whole life. I did volleyball, basketball, track, everything growing up right-handed. But come to find out, I'm left eye dominant. So it's just there's nothing I can do to make things better. I'm not going to put tape on my glasses. I know that I will eternally suck at hitting birds, and so I just do, but it's fun to watch other people who are good shots.
I have the same problem, and I know the right answer is I'm supposed to start shooting left-handed. But I heard this phrase a long time ago, something about an old dog and new tricks, and I'm 47 years old, man. I am not learning how to shoot.
It doesn't work.
No, it's not going to happen, and I can squint just a little tiny bit with my left eye, and that's just enough to focus my right eye and do well enough, I think. But I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an amazing bird shot like somebody I talked to earlier today, which, actually this will come out. Well, if you're listening to this now, it was last week, which is kind of weird in space and time right now. But, we're going to talk about somebody who claimed that they were so good with a shotgun that they had to challenge themselves and start shooting birds on the wing with a bow instead because just the shotgun wasn't challenging enough for them.
I take my hat off to them.
No,
if you're good enough that you can hit a bird on the wing with a bow, that's awesome. But I'm pretty sure it's not because you were just that good with a shotgun, right? So
I don't know.
We'll give them the benefit. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I suppose. But I'll also say, if you're 1 for 4 on birds, if you think you're averaging about 1 for 4, you're a pretty average shot. I would say you're probably not that bad.
But when I'm next to Rockstar Charles, I feel
let's not- you're gonna
bad.
jinx me. It's not-
Charles, you got to bring your bow. That's it.
No, Charles,
That ain't
not gonna be allowed to shoot with the bow.
My dogs want to retrieve something.
Yeah. Well, they might be retrieving arrows for you. Oh man! All right, guys. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap this up. What do you think you got for some closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think you've touched on a lot of the sort of the key themes and characteristics of a Griffin. You know, they're designed and intended to be a versatile dog, a dog that is able to find birds, point birds in a wide variety of covers and environments, but also have the stamina and ability to do water work. Looking at the dog, the size, the conformation, the coat is all incredibly important. And then maybe one last thing that we didn't touch on, but I think is equally important to all of those things is conditioning and weight management in Griffins. I'm sure it's true with other breeds, but in Griffins in particular. Yeah, I'm very convinced that a lot of times folks have their dog and they love their dog and they feed their dog well and they feed it snacks and then come hunting season, they say, let's go out and go hunting, and are shocked that the dog is worn out after a day or two. So to serve your companion well, you need to think about that, whether it's a Griffin or anything else. But it's all of these versatile breeds have the ability to do anything that we can do as hunters. I've had the pleasure and opportunity and honor to hunt behind a lot of different breeds at this point, not just my own dogs, but my friends' dogs as well. And Griffins certainly are able to hold their own. No, they will not cover the same ground that an English pointer will, but the good Griffin will dive into that chest-deep, muckety swamp water in North Dakota in December and pick up that duck without missing a beat. Or at least they should. And they're a versatile dog. They're a great dog. They're a great choice for folks that are looking for an animal that can check a lot of boxes, not just in the field, but in the.
I think for me, probably what I've been thinking about the most is the breed as a whole. We need to make sure, I talked about how we're kind of all in our little groups. That as we go on and our coefficient of inbreeding gets to be larger and larger, that we make sure that we're not, just staying within our own little clique to breed with, and that we're looking at, everybody that's participating in the breed. And I'm preaching to myself as much as I'm preaching to anybody else in that, I have my little group of people that I want to breed with, and I know I've got my little focus on them right now, but I think as time goes on, we're all going to need to work together to maintain genetic diversity and not go back into a genetic depression.
Yeah, right on. Well, I definitely, like I was saying in the beginning, I really appreciate everything you guys do with your breed and how you're looking way bigger than your kennel. I've got a friend who's looking for a Griff, and I am trying to talk him into a small Munsterlander, but I don't think he's going to go that route. I think he's looking for a different dog. But I did make recommendation to you guys, and it's because of your approach, looking at the bigger picture more than anything else. And I know you guys make great dogs too. So I think if he goes with a Bluestem dog, he's going to be pretty happy. So
we'll forever be at bluestemkennels.com. That's we're one of the older blogs of Griffons out there.
And it's a good blog too. I read a few of your posts. It's pretty good, pretty informing. So I liked it.
Hopefully it's entertaining. Well, thank you.
Thank
this
you.
has been
I
wonderful.
appreciate you having us on.
Thanks so much for spending some time, guys. I appreciate you guys chiming in here. All right, you guys have a good night.
Yeah, you too, Bill.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 21 of the Woe Post podcast. If you did, leave a 5-star review on your podcast directory of choice. Remember to share the podcast with all your friends, like and follow on social media, and become a patron at patreon.com/thewoepost. And if you own a bird dog related business and you'd like to advertise on the Woe Post podcast, you can contact me at bill@thewoepost.com. Stay steady and God bless.